Welcome back to the Money Corner. Happy holidays. I hope you have a great holiday. Tonight we're going to talk about real estate with three men who are prominent in real estate in Bergen County, men of three different disciplines, all of whom contribute to the real estate market and ultimately getting those buildings filled up. We're going to be talking about commercial real estate. Let me introduce my guests. First, I have Bill Mack of the Mack Development Company. Bill, is that the corporate name, or Mack Real Estate?
Well, we are a vertically integrated company, and we take a product from the inception all the way through, and I guess we can call that development.
Okay, and we see your buildings, the Mack buildings in Paramus, and I think I saw one in Rochelle Park tonight from Route 4 in that area. Next to Bill is Marty Dollinger. Marty is a real estate attorney, practices in Rochelle Park. Your office is very close to Bill Mack's office, isn't it?
Well, he's my landlord, so I'll have to watch what I say.
You've got to be very careful, Bill. And then we have Don Eisen.
You're careful.
Don Eisen is also with us, and Don is manager of the Cushman Wakefield office in Lyndhurst.
That's correct.
Okay. Fellas, I had a purpose in bringing the three of you together. Bill, you're the developer. Marty, you're the attorney. Don, you're the broker. The three of you are vital to getting a real estate venture off the ground. You all fit next to each other. I assume, Marty, you're the lead guy. Well, of course, Bill, you probably do it in terms of finding property in its raw form.
Well, I think all parts of the team are very important. Sometimes someone like Donnie will be the inspiration for us finding that property. Usually we will go out and seek property, sometimes ourselves, sometimes with the aid of a third party or a real estate broker, and that starts the process. After the property is found, and after a developer expresses an interest in buying that property for investment or development, if he buys that property for development, it starts what is a long process and perhaps can take as much as 5 or 6 years to bear fruit and produce a successful product, hopefully.
Marty, how early does the attorney come into the stage? Bill said that Don frequently will find the property. In some cases, I guess the developer spots his own property. Are you in at the very, very early stage?
I don't think so. I think the entrepreneurial decisions rest initially with the developer, with broker involvement. The attorney's involvement comes after that point in time where the developer has determined that this is something that he's enthused about. The attorney's involvement at that point might be an analysis of the existing real estate and a review of whatever the prospective problem of development might entail. But it's clearly an entrepreneurial decision, not a legal decision.
Don, my assumption is that a good real estate broker is successful because he's close to the mind and heart of the entrepreneur. He knows what will appeal to the entrepreneur's venturesome instinct or speculative instinct.
Well, we like to think so.
Go ahead.
It is a marriage that you're always bringing about. The developer, each developer has different needs, wants, and Bill has been a very innovative one here in Bergen County.
Can you tell us how?
Well, I think he was one of the first, if not the first, to really begin the march to the office development business. At one time, if you have a good memory, you'll note that there were few office buildings in all of Bergen County. Most of what the development was industrial buildings, these one-story factory buildings that are very close to where we are here. And back in the mid to late 60s, Bill, would you say, you came out here and started with you had started with industrial buildings and then made that switch, which was, I think, a great maturation for the county.
Yeah, Bill, Don mentioned you came out here. You were operating in another market?
No, we operate, our principal market is New Jersey, and we operate in perhaps 8 or 9 different counties and 15 or 20 different municipalities. But our original thrust of development was in the very early 60s in the Meadowlands. And we built industrial buildings. We also built industrial buildings in other counties as well, in Middlesex County and etc. And we felt as the 60s went along that we spotted a trend in this country and in this region towards the service industry. And we felt that the growth area, because of the maturation of our economy and because of what we saw as a perceived need and change in the way the economy was forming, we perceived that there would be an increased need for office buildings, and perhaps there was a maturity in the warehouse and industrial and that type building. So we started small, and we put up a few test buildings and did a few test market buildings in various areas. We started doing it in Bergen County, and as we saw that the market was developing, we started to build larger buildings, and we have developed a significant number of office buildings, probably about 5 million square feet of office buildings in this state over the last 12 or 15 years. The suburban office building market in New Jersey has matured and has grown over that period to a market today which encompasses approximately 150 million square feet of office space. And that's basically...
That's all of New Jersey.
Yes, but that's basically occurred only, I'd say that 80% of that has occurred only over the last 15 years.
I would agree, Bill. Matter of fact, I would say that probably in the last 10 years, you've had 80% of the growth of the office market.
If you've had the growth, the 80% in the office market, what proportion of that growth has been in Bergen County? Because I know the Princeton area is exploding now.
Well,
I was down in the Cherry Hill area recently, and I saw tremendous concentration and build-up.
generally when we speak of New Jersey, at least from our point of view,
northern New Jersey?
We look at the 10 northern counties of New Jersey. And in Bergen County, we may count somewhat differently, but we have 3 full-time individuals who just track the office market in the state of New Jersey. My latest figures were that we have about available square footage here in Bergen County. That means square footage that you could occupy either now or within the next 6 months of about 4.5 million square feet. At one time, I think the whole market in Bergen County and Hudson and Essex probably was 4.5 million square feet. That's how rapidly it's grown. And our numbers also show that we've had an absorption, that amount of space that has been taken in Bergen County this year so far, of about 2.5 million square feet. And we can get into the market some more, but that's a considerable amount of square footage.
Yeah, I don't want to leave Marty out of the discussion, but
Why not?
It's not a bad idea. He's a nice guy. I mean,
We don't need him yet.
He volunteered to come. He's going to buy us dinner later. We have to keep him in discussion. He might get
I
mad.
didn't read the small print.
Yeah,
I
there was a
like-
contract, Marty.
I like the dinner part.
I like the dinner part. When you talk about this expansion and the square footage built, are we taking away from New York City? Are we taking away from Manhattan? Is that what's happening, or where's all the business coming from that's going into these areas or these buildings?
Wow.
Well, I would think that originally some of the basics came from Manhattan. As a few basic office users and as a lot of industrial users moved to the suburbs, principally after the war, they established bases. And they've grown substantially from those bases. Of course, people moving from New York have been an important factor in the growth. But it's curious to note that a lot of the expansion in New Jersey is from within, from office industrial users separating from the warehouse and growing and needing more office space and developing that product and other products from a lot of companies coming from overseas
Yeah, I
and
was impressed.
locating their headquarters here, as well as from New York.
Several years ago, when I went down the Hilton for one of the first times, I noticed some of the Japanese companies were down there. So some of the foreign companies come in and look for a new area that is attractive to them.
You know, there are all kinds of different growth that goes on. And to say it's coming from New York, when in fact there's internal growth, as Bill suggests, but there's also operations that seem to work much better here in New Jersey than New York. So in some sense it's an expansion of New York, yet New York continues to expand. And if you look at that market, you'll see that they're not hurting. They in fact have had a tremendous expansion, continues to expand. Older buildings are being taken over and converted to office space. So it's a healthy marketplace for everyone. And as long as it stays healthy and balanced for everyone, I think it'll work quite well.
I think both New Jersey and New York have probably grown at a similar rate. New Jersey is meeting a need that in some instances New York cannot satisfy. New York is continuing to satisfy a need New Jersey will probably never be able to meet. It's a symbiotic relationship that seems to be quite successful. The interesting question that I'd like to pose to both these gentlemen through you is, do they determine or do they believe that the marketplace has seen a saturation point?
Marty would like me to ask you, do you think there's a I'm sorry, I didn't
No, that's
mean to
quite
give
all
you
right.
this.
I'm curious to know the answer to that, because I believe that what we're seeing in New Jersey to some degree may be similar to some of the telltale signs in the rest of the country.
I think it's a fascinating question.
Well, there is no question that the entire United States is generally overbuilt, but specifically as far as office space is concerned.
Doesn't that scare you?
Well,
You
sure.
got to put your bucks on the line.
Sure it does, but specifically as we refer to New York and New Jersey, and specifically referring to New Jersey is a market that has grown by geometric proportions. And as it has grown, it has continued to increase its absorption by geometric proportions. It seems to me now that it's basically impossible to keep growing at that rate. And what has happened is that the market's got a little bit ahead of itself. But as long as the market continues to absorb, I'm confident that someday, and I'm wondering when, we will have a reasonable supply and demand factor. Right now there is an overbuilding in New Jersey, but there still is an absorption. The danger is if the absorption slows down, and that since product takes 3 or 4 years to come up, if you get a downturn in absorption with an increase in product, then you really have a very difficult crunch. Right now we have a spotty market in New Jersey, only as far as price pressure is concerned, only because the supply currently outstrips the demand. It's a matter that this market, even though there's a lot of overhang, is healthier than most sectors of the country where the demand is going down and the supply is rising. Here, the supply is rising and the demand are rising at the same time, but the supply is getting a little bit ahead of the demand.
Go ahead, Don.
I just look at the market, certainly is always, having been, and as far as I can tell, always will be somewhat cyclical. There is always either too much or too little of either product or tenant. We try to keep it in balance, but as Bill says, it takes 1 to 3, 4 years, and it's taking longer these days to get product online. The absorption continues to grow, but you have so many factors working at the market at the same time that you can't just have it kept in perfect.
You know, why is it taking longer to get product to the
Marty,
market?
finally.
Marty, you're on.
Marty.
It's your turn, Marty.
It's your turn.
Interestingly enough, I don't think it
Thank
has...
you, Marty. That was a great that was a great comment.
I don't think it has anything
We've got a straight man tonight, or we've got a foil. Go ahead.
Now I know I was put between
Yeah, right.
these two.
Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with legal question. I think it has to do with the fact that as the prime sites have been developed, we're now seeing what I'd call a secondary site.
And then tertiary.
Perhaps. Those secondary sites create greater problem. And that's part of the delay. I don't think it's any more an involved process. I do think that as all of the sites get developed, there are more extraneous concerns that impact on development. And as a consequence, the process lengthens as those concerns seek resolution.
It's not the environmental laws and more and more
Well, that's part of it.
bodies.
Certainly, absolutely. That's part of it. That now relates to the site that you're dealing with, and it relates to an effort to cure some of the problems that free development, if that's the right word, development without concern, without restraint, without any of the environmental legislation or any of the traffic problems or any of the other development problems. Those were the circumstances that this state developed on in its infancy. We pay some degree of a price for that, and we're now getting a little more cautious.
Well, I'd like to just add to what Marty said. I think that obviously what you said is correct, but I do believe that there is a higher level of sophistication in the various municipalities around the state. They are quicker to anticipate and to recognize the problems that developments causes and can cause. They're very sensitive to it. The developers have become very sensitive to it, so that the amount of product that's gone on the market has, in some cases, with all of the good that's come, with new industry and new development and new housing, there is always some balance. You don't get 100% good. At some point, you have to take some of the problems that come with growth and with development.
Bill, let me interrupt you for a minute, fellows. We've got to pause for an announcement. We'll be back in just a moment with three very knowledgeable experts in real estate in Bergen County. Stay with us and join us right after the commercial. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. I'd like to reintroduce my guests. I've got three men who are experienced in real estate. They could work nationally. They spend most of their working time in northern New Jersey and a good deal of it in Bergen County. I have Bill Mack of the Mack Development Company. You probably have seen Mack Buildings, Mack Center out in the Paramus area. Very prominent developer, very fine developer. Marty Dollinger is a real estate attorney. Marty's the man with the red tie in the middle. And Don Eisen is the manager of the local branch of Cushman and Wakefield. I think a very prominent New York real estate brokerage firm, but with a very oh, you're a nationwide brokerage firm.
Yes.
That I didn't realize. I don't think of brokerage firms as being nationwide. Bill, just during the break, you made a comment that you wanted to comment on the reason for the amount of overdevelopment that we have now.
Well, I think that one of the points that should be made is that in any development cycle where demand rises and where supply rises geometrically, you can have some oversupply situations. I think that this oversupply situation that we see around the country and somewhat in New Jersey has been exacerbated somewhat by the amount of money available through institutions and by the tax laws that were enacted in 1981, which gave tremendous impetus to development, and by shortening depreciation periods and other various tax incentives such as investment tax credits. This caused a boom in development, I think, throughout the country. Not only was office building growing, but this kind of increased that growth, and I think that a lot of new people because of this, and a lot of people for some non-economic reasons got into the business. So that I think that the boom has been fueled across the country for those various reasons.
Marty, you have a different view on this.
Well, I think that the impetus was an expansion of those individuals who were already peripherally involved in the industry. The risk-reward ratio suggested that for the same dollar you could get a better yield by building an office building instead of an industrial building. And so as a consequence, I think you see greater development in the office market than the industrial market today. That has fueled competition, which, while good, may not in the long run be good. The softening of the market, this tremendous excess development that exists nationwide, not just in Bergen County, means that the Rolls-Royce product will be taken, but that the industry will have produced a lot of product that is not up to that level.
Yeah, by the way, I think it's important you fellows qualify here. When you say development and overdevelopment, you may be talking primarily about the commercial office market. Am I correct in that? Or are you're not talking about the housing market, you're not talking about the apartment market?
That's an important distinction, because I think that lends some of what Bill was suggesting. That has not seen that impetus with respect to tax law and the like, nor
Or if
has
anything,
it seen
legislation, I think, has been a retarding factor because of the rise of rent control laws.
I agree.
I think there was another factor that we shouldn't overlook, and that is New Jersey as a whole finally became New Jersey and not part of the metropolitan area.
Yeah, the whole...
And developers from not only throughout the country that we have developed from Texas, California, Florida, but from England and Japan coming now not to New York but to New Jersey to develop, and that was something that is unique to the market. The good part of it, I think, Bill, was that, and you were one of the leaders in this, you don't mind if I give him a little
Oh, no,
here,
let's stroke him.
but that the quality of the product,
It won't help, Donald.
Yeah.
we'll see.
NG, the competitor's still coming in.
The quality of the product has so vastly improved to my eye, and I'll defer to these two gentlemen, over the last 5-6 years, that has been, I think, a very, very good aspect. So you don't see someone trying to get by with a major product of low quality. If you look out there, it just gets better and better. That's the good part. You know, there are other things that we haven't looked at, but the question of what is good for each community. Each community has to now almost decide what kind of development, what is apropos for Fort Lee, may not be so for Woodcliff Lake, as an example.
I think the perception of New Jersey has changed throughout the world. The perception in New Jersey 30 years ago was sort of what you saw on the New Jersey Turnpike, with all of the smokestack industries and some of the foul odors that existed when one by either chemical plants or garbage dumps or some oil refineries that just happen to be clustered around the New Jersey Turnpike. It's taken a long while to dispel that perception, but I think New Jersey always was a state that had a lot of attributes, and now it is becoming recognized to be a state that is achieving its rightful prominence.
I sometimes become pessimistic when I realize that Bergen County is getting discovered the way it is, right next to New York, other than the traffic hours, right next to the theater, concerts, music, right next to skiing, hunting, hiking in the woods. You've just got so much here. It's remarkable, this diversity. And,
well, that says it all for New Jersey, the diversity of New Jersey, because what Bill is referring to, the Turnpike, it's still there, but there's so much more, and the diversity of New Jersey, the diversity of Bergen County is so great. When you think of the meadowlands on one end and going up to the Ramapo Mountains on the other end, that's quite...
Yeah. Marty, you raised the point before about the overbuilding, and I'm reaching the point in life now where I not only read history, but I know history, having lived through some of it. And I think of, as a kid, I used to hear about Florida land boom. We've seen major developers who had, we had a project here in Fort Lee, a housing high-rise apartment that remained empty for a long, long time. Major multi-million-dollar developers who, during these bad cycles, can't stand it or can't maintain themselves. So capital becomes a problem, or staying power becomes a problem, or undercapitalization, lack of liquidity, things like that. I've been in the stock market for many years as a broker. I've seen real estate trusts come and go, very prominent ones. A developer like yourself has to be ready to weather those storms and not get caught with a lot of product on the shelf that isn't functional.
We've been very conservative over the last several years. I think the next few years will show a consolidation in our industry. I think those that have the staying power will emerge stronger than ever before. There will be some opportunities for those who are seeking quality investments to buy those investments, perhaps even cheaper than they might be able to develop them, I would trust, during the downside of the cycle. And as I said, there will be a consolidation. Real estate is cyclical. I think basically there are a lot of strong developers in the market. I don't think we're going to have a disaster. I don't think we're going to have a disaster in New Jersey or in the Northeast. Relative to the rest of the country, it will fare a lot better. There will be some that will drop out. There will be some distress, but I think that we will emerge 4 or 5 years from now in the next cycle much healthier, as we emerged from the REIT debacle as a healthier industry as well.
I agree, and I think one of the things that we just glanced over is that Bergen County has such a strong residential base, which I think will have that appeal for people who want to move, that you do have the balance within the county, and all kinds of residential action is in the county right now, and I think that will give it more buoyancy. You mentioned Princeton before. Princeton's an area that is severely overbuilt. I don't think you're down there at all, Bill, are you?
No, we're fortunate enough to avoid that area. Probably some of the wrong reasons and some of the right reasons, but probably the only major development area from Cherry Hill up to Montvale that we didn't get involved with in New Jersey was Princeton.
The disc jockeys kid around that the Long Island Expressway is the world's longest parking lot. That's where Route 1 is going to be, around Princeton, with the traffic down there. just unbelievable. With the
That too
concentration.
is a market. It just was overzealously developed
Yeah.
with the thinking that was going to be the...
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of arithmetic and geometric growth. That market grew geometrically, and the developers felt that that market now was a Bergen County market or a Morris County market, and they just started throwing development because of the large availability of land in the same proportions in the Princeton area or greater as they did in the Bergen County area or in the Morris County area, but the development slowed down to an arithmetic development, and now you have a tremendous gap in as far as empty space is concerned, and perhaps it may take 5 to 7 years to eat away the surplus if no more building is done in the Princeton area. I don't know how you think about
Well,
it.
we don't have that. Oh, we got 3 minutes left. God, I wish we had another half hour. Bill, you were good enough to bring this graphic with you, and very briefly, I wonder if you could touch on some of the problems of the developer as he grapples with technical problems. Gosh, if you get up, you're going to ruin our mic.
That's it.
But can you work with this a little and show our
Sure.
audience a little about what the developer does?
Sure.
As a function?
I have picked a particular site which perhaps shows most of the problems that one might encounter in a development. These are 2 buildings of about 400,000 square feet, maybe perhaps a little less, in northern New Jersey. And the land before it was acquired consisted of an old hotel and a vacant piece of land with some historic landmark significance in this end. It was on a 2-lane road with 2 highways on both sides of it. The challenge here was how to develop part of it and redevelop it so that it would be well planned and able to accommodate the development in an already complex area. Some of the things that were done here to accommodate that development was a significant road widening, a preservation of a historic district, retention basin for a stormwater into a large creek or a small river, an improvement to the traffic patterns by putting a jug handle here and a jug handle here for a turnaround, an access onto a major road here, as well as 3 additional traffic lights, one here, and one here. So that all of these, and the demolition of the old hotel. So it was a demolition and a redevelopment, a new development, a better road pattern, traffic lights, responsibility as far as preserving the environment in retainage basins and in historical preserves. It's
Bill,
all the problems one might find in the site.
Development this size, what are we talking about in terms of total dollars? Is this a $25 million development?
Oh, at least that, sure. It's probably more in the $40 to $50 million.
40 to 50 million.
One of the other observations here is there was significant off-site improvement benefiting the municipalities, not only the municipality.
We've got to cut, fellas. I'm sorry. This is fascinating. I wish you'd come back again. I really hope you will, because I'd like to get into more of the technical things. Thank you for being with me. We've been trying to tell you a little about real estate with 3 very prominent people. I've got to cut now. Good night.